If you don't recognize the shape there, this is off of a bed frame. Anyway, what I'm going to make right now real quick is a guide to connect two round pipes together, weld them, and have them parallel to each other. So basically the idea is to lay one piece on one side, another piece on the other side, clamp them together, and then start a weld over the pipe. I'll give a quick example later. But anyway, this has worked real well for me, and I'm going to build another one a little bit nicer because I used real crappy scrap. By the way, iron used for beds, from what I understand, is it's got a lot of carbon in it. You can watch it spark. A lot of people say it's shitty metal, but it's actually very hard metal. It's got to be stiff to hold a person in place without bending the frame. Anyways, from what I understand, it's recycled metal from train tracks. And although train tracks aren't as high carbon as they were back in the day, it's still good metal. So you just have to use this stuff for the right reasons. Anyways, I've got a lot of this in stock. If I need to have something framed real well, and I don't want it to be real heavy, this is the stuff I use. So first off, I cut about 1/2 inch off the bottom here. You'll see why, but I'll just explain to you what I'm doing right now. I cut about 1/2 inch between these two posts. The first thing I'm going to do is cut this little slot here and this slot here. Afterward, I'm going to weld this to something else, to another bar, and once this is fastened to the other bar, then I'll go ahead and make these cuts. The whole idea is to open this space up so that you can weld, so nothing gets in the way while you're welding. And the reason that I weld this together prior to cutting it in pieces is that I want this perfectly lined up. That's the easiest way to go about it. If I don't cut this now, then it'll be kind of a messy job once I cut the rest of it. So again, I'm going to start by just cutting these slits and then attaching this to another bar that will hold them together once they're cut in half. So looking through my pile of scrap, I found this piece of metal. It's nice and fat. It's just a piece of junk. I wanted to hammer it out, but I can't find my hammers right now. So I'll be cutting this end off here, right there. Probably cut the eye off. And anyways, I figured because of the thickness of it, when I weld the bracket onto this, it shouldn't bend too much. So anyways, and the other thing is, if this is lying flat, you want to be able to clamp the frame, the tool, onto a vise and hold it in place. You want the sides open so that you can use clamps to clamp the round pipe to that. You'll see what I'm talking about. So I'll cut this off first. There we go. Pretty straight. Okay. All right, we're set up here to cut these two slots. So here we go. I don't see how you guys do it with one hand, but okay, as you can see, I went ahead and set this up to weld together. Doesn't have to be perfect, but also I ended up cutting this shorter because I need room to put some clamps here for the pipes. This will get in the way. Again, once this is welded together, I'll clamp this bar into this clamp here, and then I can set the pipes up. I'm not gonna do the whole welding picture thing because I don't have time right now. Here we go. Hold it up very nicely. You can see where my slits are here. I've got a, well, right, you can see where my slits are. I've got a weld right beside them, and then on the other side I welded the back end. So it should be pretty good. I'll have this clamped up like that when I use it. Still have to cut these angles here now. Okay, here we are, pretty much cut. I could have used a newer blade, but it should come right off. Nice butterfly. Okay, so that's what we end up with right there. Clean that up. So yeah, I've got these tabs ready to weld onto the bottom. The vise would be hanging on here. This is upside down. Ideally, you'd want these more narrow and longer so that you can use clamps to hold round pipes on the other side. You also want to be aware that you have to have, if you're going to use it on a clamp like I am, you're going to want to have it wide enough to fit that. So ideally, this should have been the width of this clamp here, and these should start right at the edge, and they should run along to the back end, and more narrow and probably thicker metal than this, but that's fine as long as you don't over tension it. You should be great. What else? Anyways, this will work. And just a reminder, use this stuff, anti-spatter. It washes right off. It's water-based. I've used something that's more oil-based, but this right here is fantastic. It'll save you lots of time, make your machine look pretty. So here we go. Gonna weld these things on. Not the greatest weld, but it's gonna stick. And that's pretty much how I'll use it there. So this is an example of how I would use this. This is some pipe off of a Wi-Fi antenna that sits out in the mountains. It's a solar powered antenna or whatever, but anyways, it's nice thick metal, and as you can see, I have it clamped. Again, it doesn't have to be clamped like you're trying to hold an elephant down. There's the other end, what it looks like. You got that gap in the middle, so that you can, if you want, you can almost go all the way around it. It doesn't have to be clamped to this vise. It could just sit and hold these two together. Just clamping these two together, and you could weld. Obviously, it's very important to put a nice V angle in there. Flay this off here. Same with this here, and then attach them. Then what I would do is I would spot weld here, or tack it here, and tack it on the bottom as close to the center as I could. And then I would go ahead and start welding it. You could let it sit loose like this, but I still like to have it clamped, so I'd start from one side and weld about 3/4 of it, unclamp it, turn it, do another 3/4, and then again. And these things come out nice and square. If you can clean this off real well so that you don't screw it all up, you would hardly tell that it was welded together. I'm feeling that this side is a little higher than this side, just by a hair bit. So I might be able to do something about that. It's just a tiny bit off. This should be right on the money. So I'll probably hammer on this a little bit to straighten that out. It could have been that this bar here was actually not straight, because it was a pretty rough piece of stock, or just that welding it warped it a little bit. In any case, I should be able to get that out. So that's it. I'll do a little run through later.